Hey guys, it's Melanie. Welcome back. I hope you are having a fantastic day. In today's video, I am going to be just kind of chit-chatting a little bit about my home fragrance budget. I feel like this is something that a lot of people became a little bit more curious about. I've received a lot of requests to discuss this topic here, especially after my last couple of candle hauls that I shared towards the end of November and beginning of December. In those videos, I mentioned that I was starting to really run low on my candle budget funds for 2024. And I think a lot of people maybe kind of got really curious about how I decide to spend money on what, specifically how much money I do spend on home fragrance in a given year. Some people had questions about how I held myself accountable. So I kind of just want to talk a little bit about just budgeting. This does not just apply, by the way, to home fragrance when it comes to just my life in general. I create budgets for everything. This is something that I was taught when I was younger by my mom. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my background because it really did have an impact on how I chose to spend money as an adult and how I maintain not going into debt for, the fun, frivolous things that nobody really needs. But, we all have fun little hobbies or things that we enjoy, that we spend money on that probably, when we step back and look at it, we're like, oh, I probably shouldn't be spending $200 on that, but it makes me happy. And if it makes me happy, I'm gonna spend $200 on it, right? But I do think there is definitely a fine line when it comes to how many times you spend $200 on something. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of different hobbies. Mine happens to be home fragrance. So I do spend a decent amount of money each year on home fragrance. Again, I'm not gonna give you guys exact numbers because listen, I know how this works. The second that I give you guys a number, there are going to be people out there who are going to have something to say about that. And bottom line is it's nobody's business how I spend my money. Listen, I make sure that our mortgage is paid for every single month. I make sure that we cover our property taxes. I make sure that our vehicle payments are made. I make sure that the insurance is, covered, that we pay for our phone bills, that we pay for health insurance, that we pay for anything that our daughter needs. Like all of that stuff comes first. But yes, I do spend what someone would probably be considering like a significant amount on stupid things like candles and wax. So, but everybody has their hobbies, right? Like if you're watching this and you're like, why would anyone spend money on candles? Do you go out and buy the latest iPhone every time it's released? Do you go out and spend a lot of money on expensive handbags? Do you drive a really beautiful luxury car? Everybody has their own things, right? Like I don't really like expensive purses. I have one expensive purse, one leather purse that I purchased from Dooney & Burke, and you bet your butt that I did budget for this handbag because it was, I think it was $350. And I 100% budgeted for that $350 purse because I was buying handbags at TJ Maxx that were falling apart after like 6 months. And I was like, I'm done doing this. I want a nice quality leather bag that I can literally have for like the next 10, 15 years. Something that I could potentially even pass on to Stella, right? So I bought this really nice Dooney & Burke purse that I've had my eye on forever. And you know what? That purse has been fantastic. It's the only handbag that I've used for the last year. And man, the quality, it shows. I drive a 2018 Dodge Grand Caravan that we purchased used because I don't care what car I drive. It needs to be practical. I need to be able to, I need to deliver flowers. So that's the perfect car for me. Like I don't need a luxury vehicle because I'm gonna make it dirty. It's gonna get gross. Like there's, water that's gonna get spilled when I'm making deliveries. Like it's not practical for me to have a really nice car. So yeah, I do spend money on candles, but I also don't spend money on other things that a lot of other people spend their money on. I still have an iPhone 10. I am trying with every fiber of my being to hang on to that phone as long as possible. I've already replaced the battery in it once, and I'm thinking about doing it again because I just don't want to spend like, what is it, $1,600 for a new iPhone. Like I don't personally want to spend money on that. So everybody has their own thing. That's kind of, you know, just the thing that I want to stress. Yours might not be home fragrance, but you might have an iPhone addiction, right? Everybody has their own thing. But I feel like the most important thing to remember in life is making sure that you are not buying things that you don't actually have the money for. And this is kind of where I want to get into talking specifically about, you know, the budgeting here and how I go about it. When I was growing up, my family would have definitely been considered a paycheck to paycheck type of family. We were probably considered like lower to like just, you know, like regular middle class. My parents worked very hard. My mom and my stepdad are divorced now, but when I was growing up, I always appreciated how hard my mom and my stepdad worked. But like there wasn't a lot of like extra money, right? Like we always had clothes, we always had a roof over our head. You know, my parents always made sure that they had enough money to put gas in the car and all of those necessities. But I didn't get to go to Disneyland. I didn't, you know, get to do a lot of these other things that my friends were doing because their parents made more money than mine. And I never really looked at that as a bad thing, and it really motivated me to, you know, try to do more in terms of education so that I could get to a place where hopefully when I was an adult that I didn't have to have this, you know, more paycheck to paycheck type of life. I could maybe live just a little bit more comfortably. Like I knew that I would never be like rich. I'm never gonna live in a $10 million house. That's not my lot in life, and that's perfectly fine. But you know, I knew that I needed to work very hard to get to where I was. And the mentality that kind of got me there was my mom always stressed to me growing up that if you do not have the money for something, you just don't buy it. And that is something that has stuck with me from the time that I was, I mean, she really started drilling this in when I started earning my own money, babysitting our neighbors and things. She was like, look, I know you just got 20 bucks for babysitting these kids for like 5 hours. This was back in the day when you would make like $5 an hour babysitting, right? So a lot of work, a lot of kids, not a lot of money. But, you know, my mom just always said to me, like, you can definitely go out and you can spend that $20 at Rite Aid and you can, you know, buy the perfume or the makeup that you want, or you can save it and then, you know, buy something bigger, maybe fancier or better down the road. But the most important thing is, you know, always save for a rainy day and do not buy things that you do not have the money for. So you do not exist living off of credit cards. By the way, I do not judge people that live off of credit cards. I am abundantly aware because of how I grew up that sometimes that is a necessity. But it should be for the necessary things, not for like the frivolous and fun things, right? I really am, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but I'm just kind of annoyed by a lot of these things that have popped up recently that are not quite credit cards, but they are basically the same thing as a credit card. So I'm talking about things like Klarna, Afterpay, QVC has Easy Pay, right? Like they will allow you to do like 3 or 4 monthly installments, and if you pay that item off within that time frame, there's no interest or anything like that. So that can definitely be a good thing if you know that you're going to be able to afford those payments each month. But I do think there's a lot of people out there who sometimes are just like, I'll just skip this payment, it'll be fine. The interest that accrues is wild. So for me, I have never, the way that we use credit cards is we definitely utilize them here to pay for a lot of things, but we are very careful with exactly how much money that we spend on our credit cards so that our credit score doesn't get dinged for like overextending our credit. If you don't know about this, definitely look into it. It affects your credit score. Craig and I learned this lesson a long time ago, and we were like, oh crap. We always paid our bills on time, right? Like we never carried a balance with our credit cards, but we would definitely work our way up to the max each month, thinking that, you know, it was good because we were collecting all of these like airline miles. But what we were doing we were essentially getting our credit score dinged by, you know, using basically all the credit that we had available each month to pay all of our bills with. So, and the reason that we did that was just because we were like, free miles are great, right? But anyway, we learned that lesson early on and we no longer do that. We do still utilize credit cards that way to be able to get free airline miles. Craig travels back east to his parents' cottage up in Canada in the Thousand Islands several times a year. We have barely ever paid for a plane ticket for him to do that because of the way that we utilize our credit cards to accumulate miles. So credit cards can be a wonderful thing, but they can also be something that just creates a lot of temptation. And I think that's where a lot of people get themselves into trouble. And again, going back to my mom's rule of if you do not have the money for something, you do not spend it. Like, this is something that is just a hard and fast rule for me. So that is how I grew up. And that is how I am choosing to raise Stella as well. It's a little tough with Stella. She is growing up in a very different time. She is not growing up with parents who are paycheck to paycheck. We don't struggle like that the way that my parents did. And I'm really proud to be able to not have her grow up in that. But at the same time, I almost think it's a detriment to her because to Stella, it's just like, well, we have the money to, like, you know, go on trips and do these things. And when Stella wants to do sports, like, I will do whatever I need to get her enrolled. I will pay whatever fee I need to. Like, you know, we always come through for that kind of stuff. And it feels good to be able to do that as a parent. But I do think that it does make it harder for kids these days to really understand, you know, like how to budget, how to live within your means. So it just means that I have to do some extra work around that. But Craig and I are big believers in leading by example when it comes to teaching Stella things. So, you know, I talk to her very actively about, you know, what we're spending on groceries, what our mortgage costs, you know, the fact that every November we have to pay property taxes and we have to save up a chunk of change for that. So, you know, like, she is aware of all of this stuff. It's not to burden her with it. It's to start to, like, get her to think about how the world works and how at some point she's going to go out and she's going to have to, you know, live her own life and make her own financial decisions. And oh my gosh, I am really hoping that we are doing a good job with that because I would hate for her to live her life in debt. I know how stressful that is. I have a lot of friends who in college would spend money like it was growing on trees, right? And they did that with credit cards. Like, the amount of credit card debt that a lot of my friends have from back when we were in college is still wild to me, but thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that they just chose not to pay off each month. And the interest that accrues is just wild. So anyway, let's actually talk about how I create these budgets for myself. So I have a PayPal account, and when it comes to purchasing anything here for my channel, the only money that I can use to purchase things online or in store, because I have a PayPal credit card that's connected to my PayPal account, is I have to have the money in that account. So basically, let's just discuss the 2025 home fragrance budget. My 2025 home fragrance budget is basically the money that I earned in 2024 that was not from my day job. So all of the money from my day job goes to pay for, you know, crap around the house, the mortgage, the food, the bills, you know, that kind of stuff. But I am lucky enough in the business that I'm in, I do get a lot of tips when I make deliveries, when I work events, I make extra money. That money goes into my PayPal. I have AdSense here on my YouTube channel. So I will take some of the money that I receive from AdSense each month, and I will put that into my PayPal account. And within that PayPal account where I put all of that extra money that, you know, I earn from doing side gigs, helping friends out, money that I get for my birthday, you know, just, or other special occasions. Like my mom, she just is always like, here's, for my birthday, usually she's like, here's $100. For Christmas, usually she's like, here's $300. This year, she actually got us a Blackstone, which I liked, because most years, like I said, my mom, she'll just give me money. She's not the type to want to go out and, you know, hunt things down at the mall. And so she's always been that type. Craig's parents also, a lot of times, if they don't know what to give us, they'll just give us money for birthday and Christmas, which is great because, again, that is money that I was not expecting. It's money that I don't need to put towards our bills because I have, you know, Craig and I both have gainful employment that we use to pay for those things. So I put that money in my PayPal account. So everything that I earn outside of my normal job in 2024 is currently sitting in my PayPal account. And then within that, I designate, I want to spend this exact amount this year on home fragrance. I want to spend this exact amount on the beauty stuff that I want to feature here on my channel. So the skincare that I review, the hair care, the any tools that I purchase, skincare tools, things like that. So I, within that PayPal budget, will designate a certain amount of dollars for home fragrance, for beauty stuff. And then also, because it's just a good thing for me to do, any of the other things, like if I want to buy a new purse, a new phone, if I want to maybe go take a trip to see a girlfriend, that money also, you know, needs to be in that PayPal account to account for all of those fun, frivolous things that are not life necessities. So my budget was, again, created with all of the extra money that I earned in 2024. I did not touch any of that money. It just immediately went into the PayPal account, and that's what I have access to. And once that money runs out, here's the thing, I just do not allow myself to add more money into that PayPal. I do not allow myself to grab our Capital One venture card to pay for something. I just don't buy it. And that's it. Like it has to be as simple as that. You have to figure out what your budget is, and you just have to live within those means. And sometimes that can be a bummer, you know, like if you don't have a lot of extra money, you know, that can be hard. And that's where I think a lot of people do then turn to Klarna, Afterpay, Easy Pay. And while they think that they might be able to make those payments if they're spread out, what if something comes up? Like, it just is really hard. And listen, I have this YouTube channel, and sometimes it's very difficult for me to share things, especially things that are a little bit more expensive, because I do think that there are people out there who have this mentality of you only live once, or they have this fear of missing out. And I would feel awful if someone went out and bought something that they didn't have the money for just because I said I really liked it. But I've always said this, and I really do mean it. And I hope that as you watch any of my home fragrance content throughout 2025, that you know that it is not my intention to tell you that you have to go out and buy every single thing that I do. You have to determine whether you have the money for that, whether you're that interested in it. That's not something that I can tell you to do. I am not easily influenced. I mean, I definitely can be, but I try really hard to not be easily influenced, to immediately like go and buy something when I see it coming out. If it is something that I want and I can budget for it, yes, absolutely. But, you know, like I would feel awful if someone spent just money that they didn't have after watching my videos because they felt like they absolutely needed that thing, that they couldn't live without it. This is why I always say, especially, you know, in my weekly beauty chit chat, that I am sharing all of these fun, frivolous, completely unnecessary things because they're not necessities. None of the stuff that I show here on my channel is a necessity. The skincare that I show, not a necessity. You should probably wash your face. You should probably protect with SPF. I think that's kind of the bare minimum. But, you know, other than that, like you don't need all these serums. You don't need a fancy hair tool. You don't need a Dyson hair dryer. You can buy a hair dryer from Revlon for like 25 bucks. Like, you know, like you don't need all of these things. But my hope is that if you are actually interested in something and you were planning on purchasing it anyway because you have the money for it, that watching the video helps you decide whether you really want to buy that thing or not. That's really my only intention here. It is not to tell you to go out and buy every single thing, because that's not realistic. I can't do that. Nor do I want to do that, because my house would be a cluttered disaster. We all know that I've been working for a couple of years now to whittle down my outrageous candle collection that I built up over the years, that I probably spent a little bit more money on than I should have at one point or another. But I've been, trying to whittle that collection down because I just got overwhelmed by the amount that I purchased in terms of backups, right? I'm finally at a place now where I feel really good about the amount of candles that I have, and I don't want to go back. And so for me, I don't know that my spending will necessarily change a whole lot in 2025, but one thing that I think has been a theme for me, especially over the last, I would say 2-3 years especially, is I am valuing quality over quantity. I don't need like 75, vanilla balsam candles. No one needs that many of like 1 scent. Bath and Body Works will always put out something else that smells good in the future, right? Like, sure, grab a couple. But for me, like, I'm no longer purchasing any one thing in bulk. I would rather have one really nice thing that has a great quality versus 4 or 5 things that are like quality, or maybe kind of futs out a little bit early. I just don't think that that is really where it's at for me. And it might just have to do with getting older and valuing different things in life. And it's not a judgment call on anyone who would rather spend, the money that I do on one nice thing. If they want, 4 or 5, other things that, will get them more in terms of fragrance or in terms of like amount of product or whatever, go do that. But for me at this point, I would rather spend my money on things that I know that I value the quality of versus having more of things that are maybe not the best quality, right? So this is why I haven't spent a boatload of money on Bath and Body Works candles in the last couple of years, because the quality isn't always the best. Like, yes, there are definitely things that are worthwhile, absolutely. It's why I continue to shop there sometimes, but I don't spend nearly as much money there. I have personally found that especially, Voluspa candles, Kringle candles, and, Homeworks can still be a little hit and miss, but they do have some great products. I mean, especially with a lot of these things that came out in the Elton John collection, like, I was really happy with the overall quality, and I don't mind spending a little bit more money on those things because they just feel like a better investment for me personally. And that's really it, you guys. I feel like, how many minutes? I've been talking for 22 minutes. And I mean, I know that I'm not answering the question of this is exactly how much money I spend on home fragrance, but I'm not going to subject myself to feedback on that because it's again, my business. You spend how much money you have to spend on this fun, frivolous stuff. That's, it's going to vary from person to person. But the most important thing that I would like to pass along is that in 2025, maybe the best thing to do is to really make a list of the things that you want to try in the coming year. So specific brands, I always do that. If there are specific candles or sizes of candles, write that down. The names of the companies, and then designate a dollar amount. You might go over, but listen, it's a learning process. You might need a couple years to perfect this, but just start actually writing down the things that you want to try, and then just try to, as much as possible, stick to that list. That is what I do. I try not to go too far outside of that list, especially, again, if I am coming to the end of my candle budget. Yeah, and I just don't go beyond that. And that's boring. Listen, that's boring, but that's just the way that I do it. I hold myself accountable. I do not allow myself to overspend. I do not allow myself to accumulate debt. It's just not something that I want in my life for me personally. I think it creates stress. If it ever comes to a point where things become financially tough for Craig and I know that it would be very easy for me to step away from that PayPal. If I needed to, I would clean that out to pay for our bills. Like, that money, you know, would definitely get put to good use. But like, I wouldn't be sad about it. It's just the way that life would work in that moment. And then I can revisit it in the future once things, you know, look up again. Everybody goes through tough times and you just kind of have to roll with it. This is something that, you know, Craig and I, we've had a lot of ups and downs financially throughout our years being together and being married. But, you know, I feel like we both have the same mentality of not overspending and not overdoing it and living within the means that we have. And I feel like that's just something that I wish everybody had. It's not necessarily the way that everybody grew up. It's not, you know, some people are married to partners that don't have that same mentality. So it can be really hard to, you know, be on the same page. I feel very lucky to be on the same page as Craig. But, you know, you got to do as much as you can to live within your means. And that's just all there is to it. So, yeah, this isn't fun. This is not exciting. This is budgeting. This is boring everyday life stuff. And you just can't live outside of your means. That's the bottom line. So yeah, my candle budget, my home fragrance budget, I guess I should say, has been set for 2025 using money that I set aside in 2024. And then from January 1st to December 31st, 2025, any money that I make outside of my job, that I, you know, feel like I can put into my PayPal account, that's the money that I will then get to spend in 2026. You know, and if I need to give my mom some of that money, then I don't get to buy the home fragrance, you know. My mom is in a spot right now where I might have to help her a little bit financially, so I will happily take out whatever I need to from that PayPal account because it's money, again, that was kind of an extra for me to be able to spend on fun, frivolous things. But if I, you know, need to give it to my mom to get her through, I will give it to my mom to get her through, and I just won't be able to buy any candles, and that'll be fine. Listen, I still have a good number of candles that would probably get me through this entire year very easily, and probably most of 2026 as well. There's still a lot left, so I don't necessarily need to buy anything, but I like to do it because I like to share my thoughts here on my channel. But I never want you guys to walk away from my videos feeling like, oh, I have to go get this because Melanie said she really liked it. My intention is, if you do really like it and you have the money for it, go for it. This has been my experience. If you think that this product is worthwhile, here you go. Go ahead and buy it. But yeah, anyway, I hope that was helpful. I'm not sure that this is what people were expecting, but this is how I do it. This is how I live my life. This is how I fund all of the frivolous things in my life. It's just, I have to be able to account for it financially. And if I can't, then I just don't get to have those things. So anyway, there you have it. Hopefully that was helpful. Please let us know if you have any specific tips or tricks in terms of, you know, funding your hobbies, things that you have done in the past that have been helpful, how you hold yourself accountable. For me, it's just knowing that I'm not allowed to spend outside of the money that I have, and that's it. So if you have something different that works for you, leave it down below. But I appreciate you guys being here. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Toodaloo.